All right, hello everyone. So I probably couldn't have got much of a better intro than what Carson left us with at the keynote, because he left us with the slide saying we need to be able to verify our analytics are working in some predictable and organized way. And that's exactly what I'm talking about today. So we're going to review the MITRE ATT&CK framework and how to use it specifically to catch post-exploitation. I've been really happy with how all of the talks are going so far. I feel like everything kind of has the same large picture, but we're all kind of putting in a different piece of the puzzle. And so this is the piece that kind of fills in the how to do some of the things that we've been hearing about from the other speakers. So as Justin said, my name is John Hubbard. I am the SOC lead for GlaxoSmithKline, and that is my day job. I also teach SEC 511, which is continuous monitoring and security operations for SANS, as well as I'm going to start teaching 555 soon, as well as the brand new 455, which is building a SIEM with the ELASTICSEARCH. Like Justin, I bleed blue, trying to bring the awesome back to the blue team. How many people in here have taken 511 before? Okay, maybe 25% of the class? That's awesome. So this is the mindset from the class. I just wanted to pass that on in case people haven't gone through this before. We all have to assume we've been compromised and can be compromised. But just because you're compromised doesn't mean it's going to go all the way to the point where Brian Krebs is making a phone call and tweeting about it and things like that, right? If people get inside the firewall, that's okay if you catch it fast enough. So we have to have that mindset that we're going to be compromised, and we have to line up our detections to catch anything that does get beyond our preventions. And so that's what this is about. We're going to be talking about post-exploitation, stuff that has partially succeeded already but has not become a disaster. To do that, we want to have hunt teams. And our hunt teams are going to be going out, looking at these tactical detection techniques that we've been talking about all week, and looking for that post-exploitation and the evidence of that. As we say, prevention is ideal, detection is a must. There's the prevent, detect, respond cycle, right? So we're past prevention. Now we need to find out how to detect things, and of course we need to respond quickly when things happen. So the main questions we're asking this week, how do I collect logs? Which logs do I collect? How do I parse and enrich those things? Those have been covered quite well from the speakers so far. I'm going to be talking a little bit more for what specifically are we going to be looking for in those logs. A quick intro to this. If you haven't seen the ELASTICSEARCH laid out like this before, it's one of our favorite things. That's why we wrote SEC 455 on it. It happens to work quite well for this purpose. So this is the basic architecture. We have our endpoint devices collecting logs, going to LOGSTASH, enriching them like we've seen, and then going to Elasticsearch, and then we use Kibana as the front end to Elasticsearch. There's XPack that goes with that too, that can put in some more of the SIEM-centric features for reporting and alerting. And then you can also supplement your current SIEM with this. You don't need to go all the way to it, but we like what it enables because, as Kevin showed earlier, LOGSTASH is awesome at enriching our logs. You don't need to switch fully to Elastic, but you can use it as a supplement, whether you use Elastic or just the LOGSTASH piece. There's actually a lot of options. You can insert LOGSTASH in your pipeline, just do the enrichment, like whatever you're interested in adding to those logs, and then split it out into the SIEM you already have, or you can do a dual SIEM thing, so what we call the dual stack SIEM. I believe Justin mentioned it earlier. If you have the compliance SIEM, aka the coffee break SIEM, where everything goes, perhaps it's loaded down, you can split it into a tactical and a compliance SIEM. Or you can do other things like put LOGSTASH after that and continue on and go from there. So point being here, the short story is Elasticsearch is not a SIEM out of the box, but you can have it act like one very easily. We've been doing that. We've been talking about doing that all week. It collects, parses, and enriches everything. It can do reporting, alerting. We also like that it horizontally scales very well and has a very active third-party plugin community, so it's friendly for developers. So what do we want to collect? We've all heard people say these things all week. To catch post-exploitation, I want to point out specifically, it is visibility that is required on your internal network. How many people here would say that they can see the inside of their network as well as they can see the perimeter and stuff that goes across it? Not many hands, but there's a few. So that's awesome. But that is the type of thing you need for post-exploitation, right? Because they deliver that initial backdoor through the perimeter. If you don't catch that, they're pivoting around on the internal network, collecting whatever they're going to do. And that's why we need the visibility. So how do we collect those things? Some of the options here, we have beats, right? That is the thing that goes naturally with Elasticsearch. Beats is a log collection framework. It comes in a couple different pieces. There's WinLogBeat to collect Windows logs. There's PacketBeat for network traffic. FileBeat can collect any arbitrary file, and it's kind of like tailing the log. And there's also AuditBeat. If you don't want to use beats, there's NXLog. NXLog has been mentioned a few times too. Outstanding log collection agent. It's very, very flexible and can use almost any kind of format for input or output. We like that one a lot. If you have to go agentless, Windows Event Forwarding is available. It's built into Windows. Take those logs, ship them to another device, and then either use NXLog, Beats, whatever you have on that other device. That is agentless. Same thing with syslog, r6log, the Linux equivalents there. If you have cloud stuff, there's scripts, there's the APIs. You may need to do something more custom for those. So for catching Windows post-exploitation, we've highlighted a few of these already too. Authentication. If you can't see brute force, if you can't see password spraying, if you can't see password guessing, you're going to have a lot of trouble. Sysmon is the thing that helps a lot with that. How many people here are actually using Sysmon? Decent amount, maybe a little less than 50%, but that's awesome. So we all know the best thing to happen to InfoSec has been Taylor Swift, right? If you haven't got into Sysmon, yet, check out Taylor's GitHub account, Swift on Security. Outstanding place to start. It filters out a lot of the noise, and it gives you a great way to jump right in and filter out the stuff that's very suspicious from the beginning. We also have the process creation auditing. Auto runs we've mentioned a few times, but not in depth. Auto runs is the sysinternals tool, and it will enumerate all of the auto start extensibility points for Windows, and it will dump those to a CSV file, which you can very conveniently pick up with FileBeat or NXLog or your logging agent, whatever it may be. If you can collect all of the auto run items in your organization that are running and compare them all to each other, do that long tail analysis, it's very easy to catch the stuff that shouldn't be there. Whitelisting. Even if you're not doing enforcement of whitelisting, the fact that something should have been stopped, great detection, even if you're not going all the way to enforce mode. PowerShell, that one's obvious. Network logs. So there's a couple ways to pick up network logs. There's the built-in ways. There's Windows DNS log. You can do the analytical logging way of doing it. There's bind logs. As Justin alluded to, it's way easier to do network extraction in a lot of cases. And network extraction is probably best and most freely done with Bro. Bro picks up DNS, HTTP, SSL, NetFlow. It can pick up many, many things, and it puts them out there in a standardized way. You don't have to mess with your endpoints at all. If you aren't utilizing Bro yet, I highly suggest you check it out. It is awesome for hunting. It shows you all your data, and it says, here's what I saw. You pick out what's interesting to you. It's a great solution for that. Full PCAP. Security Onion, also awesome for doing that. So with our network traffic, it's the command and control stuff that we're looking for. And to catch that, you need to see layer 7. In the past, maybe layer 3 and 4 was going to get you what you needed, but we know now that we need full PCAP. Think about NotPetya. What happened there, we had a known good vendor that was mandated by the government. It was accounting software. And the adversary compromised that vendor. They compiled the backdoor into that software and then pushed the update out to the people who had to use it. And then that particular backdoor was being controlled in the HTTP headers and the cookie value. Good luck whitelisting that, right? That's something that is going to be very, very difficult to catch because it's coming from what you would think is a known good source. So you're not going to whitelist it. It's already in the HTTP header, which is very hard to catch in the first place. Very difficult. So you need full layer 7 visibility to catch a lot of command and control. Unexpected internal to internal traffic. That's the other thing. With post-exploitation, all the stuff's going to be inside. So if you can't see from different network segments around in your organization, you're never going to catch post-exploitation. You might catch the first compromise, but if you miss that, then you have a big problem. Executables. Do you allow everyone in your organization to download whatever executable they want? Hopefully not. But also, can you see them moving around within your organization? That's something that shouldn't happen very often unless it's coming from maybe your update servers from WSUS or something like that. SSL certificates. Bro is great at carving out the issuers and the subjects and all the fields out of an SSL certificate, and you can use a lot of clever techniques to pick out stuff in that, like randomization, or random looking domain names, the length of the fields. Malware very often does not fill out SSL certs all the way. So even without any kind of SSL decryption, you can do very well at picking up malware that uses SSL. And then we're going to be pushing that to LOGSTASH. So this is buffer, back pressure capable. We're going to use it with beats. That's awesome. We're going to use the modern formats. So like I was saying with syslog, it's very painful to parse some of that stuff. So try to use those modern formats, CSV, JSON, key value things that can automatically be parsed so you don't have to worry about whether the fields that you're trying to collect and detect on are going to actually be caught correctly. LOGSTASH comes in 3 different sections here. It's input. There's a filter section where you do all the enrichment. And the output turns a mess into something beautiful that you can enrich. So the most important point here is to catch post-exploitation, you need certain high-value logs from your host and your network, and you need to enrich them, and you need to be able to be relying on that happening in a certain way. Attackers live off the land. If you can't see what's going on your endpoints and you can't see what's going on your internal network, you're never going to catch post-exploitation traffic. Attackers use all the protocols in various ways, and if you can't see those things, you're going to miss it. So what do we do about that? So this is the heart of this talk and what I want you to most take away from it. How many people here are familiar with the MITRE ATT&CK framework? So that's a lot of people. That's good. How many people have actually gone to the website, clicked through the actual techniques, and things like that? Same amount? How many people have operationalized it? Decent amount, but not everyone. So that's where we're going with this. What ATT&CK does. So what ATT&CK does, it is a list of post-compromise behaviors that the adversary will likely attempt or could attempt against you. And so it comes in multiple parts. There's the original attack section, and there's now what's called pre-attack, which is the pre-exploitation stage stuff, which is awesome. Today we're talking about this. Anything that happens after exploitation has already succeeded. So it's going to be these particular tactics here: persistence, credential access, execution, command and control. And it looks like this. We have a matrix. We have tactics across the top. That's going to be our high level, what is going to be happening, persistence and all of those things. And then we have specific ways that they can achieve those tactics going down through the columns. So the tactics are on the top. It's what the techniques accomplish, and the techniques are the columns that go underneath it. It's all known ways of accomplishing that particular tactic. All known ways? Mostly, yes. They're still adding to this constantly, so if you see something missing, please tell them about it. They will add it. It's constantly being updated, which is awesome. Note that particular techniques can be included in more than one tactic. So tactics are the what, techniques are the how. Persistence, achieved by a bootkit. Privilege escalation, achieved by using UAC bypass. Credential access, achieved through credential dumping. Why is this important? No talk is complete without the pyramid of pain, right? So here it is if you haven't seen it before, or if you have seen it before, of course, this is the top. And the point being here, are we not telling the bad guys what we know about and how we're going to deal with it? Yes, we are. However, it is the hardest for them to come up with new things to do. So it is still very worthwhile and very valuable to do so. So this addresses the stuff at the top of the pyramid that you should be able to catch because it's the hardest for them to change these things. And so it is an awesome blue team checklist. They are high-level analytics. There are a number of things that go with each of these. There's suggested preventions, there's suggested detections, and they also have the CAR repository, which is actual analytics that go with each one and how you can implement a detection for those things. As well, since this is post-exploitation, these are the most dangerous things to miss. So if you have no other detections, these are the ones you need, because this is the stuff that happens right before it gets really bad. This is the most important stuff to catch. And what I want to impress upon you with this talk, you can objectively measure your defense with this. So ask yourself, what is the techniques that I think would work in my organization, work against me if an attacker were to do them, and what things are the most important to us, and see if those two things overlap. So if you're anything like my organization, the first time we looked at this, we kind of had this kind of experience. We're like, well, we didn't know all these options were there, so we got a problem here. So what if you do what I'm going to suggest here in a second, which is our story of how we implemented this, you'll end up a little bit more like this. So here's what we did. This is the case study on what GSK has done this year. Earlier this year, we looked at all these things, and we said, OK, here's all the techniques. These are the things that I think are the most important and the most dangerous to us. We lined them all up. We marked them off on the matrix, all the techniques, and we put them into a issue tracking system. We made some custom fields, and we actually picked a number between 0 and 6 for how well we thought we could detect that particular thing. Why 0 and 6? It doesn't matter. Pick as many numbers as you want. But here are the levels we went with. 0, we can't see this at all. 1, it's locally logged only. 2, it's centrally logged, but we don't do anything with it. 3, it's something that's correlated against something else, but it's not creating an alert. 4, it's something that shows up in a report somewhere, but it's not going to alert anyone unless that person is looking at the report and can visually pick it out. And then after that, it's something, 5 was it creates an alert, but it might be prone to false positives. And then the 6th level was, this is a high fidelity, you have to act. It's definitely going to catch something bad almost every single time. So we added up all those points, and we made ourselves a goal. We said, here's where we are now. We want to close the gap between where we are now and where we think we should be by the end of the year, 90%. And we made that our goal for the team for the year. And it has worked really, really well. Management has loved this because now we've been able to say we are this confident that we can catch all of these particular tactics in these ways, and we can demonstrate improvement over time. So every month we took a snapshot and said, here's where we are, here's where we are, here's where we are. Yes? Yeah. So it was can't see it at all. And there's locally logged, centrally logged, correlated, and reported on, and then low fidelity alert, high fidelity alert. And we just kind of picked those as ever increasing levels of goodness, but you could obviously go with less or more than that. So we took all these things, we put them in an issue tracking system. Now we can not only count it, but we can run a report to say, here's all of the things, what stage that particular analytic detection method is in. So is it an experimental rule, or is it something that's stable and good? What does it cover? We can make graphs and charts out of it, and it's very easy to pull that data every month. It's awesome. We also go back and we prove it with red teaming. So the Red Canary group has a atomic red team project, and that is something that will do unit tests for all of the techniques. So you may think you have it covered, but this is a way of going back for all the techniques. It will have a simple command in it, and if your thing fires, you got it, and if it doesn't fire, you're missing it, right? It might not be perfect, but it's much, much better than not having it. MITRE has also just today released something called Caldera, where you can actually automate red team testing in the various steps. I haven't tested that myself. I just wanted to mention that. Caldera, it's on GitHub. MITRE just tweeted about it like 2 hours ago. So yeah, so this has made management obviously super happy, and I'm imagining somewhere Anonymous is weeping tears of sadness as they fail, hopefully. Okay, so with that, some examples. So I wanted to walk through how a particular, very common attack scenario would go if you had this sort of thing in play. So we're starting at assuming compromise. Someone's always going to get phished, right? There's going to be a Word document with a macro. Someone's going to click it, whatever it is. So what would the attackers do? We're going to look at the attack tactics and the specific techniques, how if you implemented all the things we've been talking about all week, how you would catch them in multiple different ways. So the first thing, when you get into a network, as an attacker, what do? You establish persistence, because a lot of times client-side exploitation is not going to work more than once, or if it is, it's not as reliable as server-side exploitation. So you want to establish persistence. How might they do that? You consult attack. You have new service, scheduled tasks, registry run keys, start folders. These are very easy things to monitor with what we've talked about this week. Windows sysmon logs. New services, that's in the system log, 7045. We have new scheduled tasks. Sysmon can catch like everything here. Sysmon event ID 13 in particular is good for watching your current version run key in the registry. And then you can take all these things, run them through Kibana or whatever SIEM you have, do least frequency of occurrence, long tail analysis, whatever you want to call it, to catch the stuff that's odd. So in this case, I did this all and I logged it all into an Elasticsearch cluster. And here's an example running event ID 13. If you did SIM Net Wars last night, this is a lot of the stuff that you guys are going to be doing in SIM Net Wars. For example, in this particular one, I searched for event ID 13, which is registry modification. Easily shows Windows current version run key. We have some random stuff there pointing to a random VBS file in the app data local temp. And then after that, execution. So maybe this organization has whitelisting, and they think, well, we're doing OK, but there might be some ways of bypassing whitelisting. What are those methods? Consult the attack framework. There's a few in there. Run DLL 32, reg server 32, PowerShell, scripting. These are all very common ways of bypassing whitelisting. So how do you find those? There's process creation logs. There's sysmon logs. There's PowerShell logs. We've seen that over and over today. App blocker. If you don't have it in enforce mode, the fact that it says, well, this would have been blocked, but it wasn't, still a very, very actionable detect, right? So here's what happened here. Two different techniques, scripting and PowerShell. This macro was VBS, or well, VBA, and it ran PowerShell encoded. So two different techniques. It hits here on this attack, and it's very easy to catch them. What this did was actually run DLL 32, and it used Metasploit DLL to get around it. So this shows up very easily in the command line. And you can see the image here, run DLL 32, and message 8003 on the bottom there. Metasploit DLL was allowed to run, but would have been prevented if app locker policy were enforced. Very easy to detect. Caught two different ways, command line and app locker. What about PowerShell reaching out to the internet to download its second stage? This is another very common thing. Almost all spam and macros are going to contain a minimal amount of code that will probably download an executable or something from somewhere else and drop it on the hard drive. So in this case, I created a dashboard based on sysmon rules looking for odd processes reaching out to the internet. PowerShell, OK. So we have PowerShell 17 connections to the internet. What's going on there? We can easily look that up in the PowerShell logs. And in there we have command.exe running PowerShell, as Justin pointed out, on the command line, downloading and invoking Mimikatz and dumping the credentials. So very easy one to catch. This would have been caught on the command line. It also would have been caught in the PowerShell logs as it decoded the PowerShell-based Mimikatz. We can now assume that the attackers have the credentials for something on the system. So that finds the tactic credential access with the technique credential dumping. That's all lined up in there and easy to find. So what did they do with those? You can use timeline. It's very easy to overlay your average number of failed logons over time, as well as the actual count at that particular moment, from yesterday compared to today, from last week compared to this week. And in this case, we can see that there was a spike of failed logons followed by some successful logons. So we can probably infer from that that something bad happened, easy to catch on a dashboard. When we look at this, there are two other particular techniques. Remote file copy. So moving stuff around within the network. If you can't see this either on your network or in your command line logs, you're going to miss this sort of thing. Windows admin shares, another very common one. So we have the fact that there was an administrator account on our user's computer that was compromised. Unfortunately, that user was running as an administrator. I'm sure no one here would ever have done such a thing with their users, but sometimes it happens, right? So we can go to the Elasticsearch or whatever SIM we have, search for the administrator keyword. Unfortunately, we find now a command line, netuse, admin PC, $$ with the user administrator. OK, so from this we have they're probably pivoting to admin's actual computer, and they mounted the drive for some reason. What did they do with that? They used POST-EXPLOITATION to then move on and stage their Metasploit DLL on that computer, because now they have the credentials from the first computer they compromised. Do that. That's logged in two different ways. Then finally, we have exfiltration. So what happened here? We can prove that Metasploit first was run because there is the app locker log. Same thing. Metasploit.dll was allowed to run. It wasn't blocked, but we have it there. And then we have the command line log on the admin computer. So tree was run. What does that do? That enumerates all the files on the hard drive. So the attacker was looking for something interesting to steal. That's an easy one to flag on, because how many users do you think run tree? How many users even know about tree, right? Easy one to trigger on. Okay, so what did they do after that? 6 minutes later, they found customer-data.txt on the desktop, and they found that 7-zip was installed, and they encoded that into a encrypted photos.7-zip as an archive of that text file, and they used a password of 7890UIO, etc. If you didn't have command line logs and you didn't have network logs, you would never figure out what left your organization because, one, you wouldn't know the file that was taken in the first place from the command line log. But maybe you have network logs. Well, okay, so something that was a 7-zip left, but it's encrypted. Are you going to crack that password? Probably not, unless you have a really awesome rig. That's a pretty long password. And this is all modeled after stuff that's actually been done out there. This is very, very common. Encrypt something, break it up into pieces. Often this will be broken up into maybe several different files and exported separately, all encrypted. This easily exposes what was done. Then finally, with the curl, they limited the rate that it was being exported. So now we're going to fly under the radar and make sure it never goes under 150K. And they're uploading it to mydatadropbox.biz. That would be something we could pick up with all of our DNS enrichment that we talked about all week. But we could also just find it from the command line here because curl is probably not something. It's a little surprising that it was even installed in the first place because it's Windows. But it was there, and we see it uploading. But they were fairly sneaky about it. So without these things, you would have missed all of that. What about command and control? So this may come up often, right? DNS tunneling. How do you catch it in an easy way? If you have a SIEM that can bucket things by the domain name, such as DNS queries, look how easy it is to identify DNS tunneling, right? The most frequently used domain names bucketed by query type, it sticks out in 3 different query types, TXT, CNAME, and MX. All of that stuff points to a particular domain name that was used for command and control. Very easy to visualize and catch that sort of tactic. So here's our summary of this attack. We had a VBS set to auto start in the registry. That was persistence. We had several techniques that were enumerated. We caught it in several different ways. VBS ran with PowerShell, caught that with all of those logs. Meterpreter was run, whitelist bypass, caught that in 2 or 3 different ways. PowerShell-based Mimikatz, that's getting sneakier. It doesn't even touch the disk, but we still caught that in several different ways. We scanned with those credentials. That was easily identified with the visualizations and timeline. We pivoted to an admin desktop and remote file copied that over, the Metasploit DLL over to there, and we found that. And then we mounted the admin shares, used PSExec, move it over, found that. Compressed and encrypted data and exfilled it. All the evidence was there for that. And DNS tunneling, very, very easy to catch. These are all extremely common steps for any breach. And all of these would have been caught several different ways right in the middle of its progress, and you would have been able to stop this before it escalated into an actual data breach in at least 8 different ways. All of these were probably 16 different ways. So how do you know what to do aside from the attack framework? There is an awesome paper I like to point out from Japan CERT called Commands Abused by Attackers. If you haven't read this paper, look it up. This is a great way to trigger on particular commands. So when I mentioned like how many users run tree, this is a paper that points out all of the other options that you have for things like that. Net user, how many people are running net user as a normal person? They're not, right? Task list from the command line, who am I? And particular arguments that go with these things. They actually analyzed real breaches, and they point out which one of these are the most odd for actual users to run, how often they saw it, and it makes for an awesome actionable detection list. So the review here, we want to collect our high-value logs from our hosts and our network. We need both to catch post-exploitation because it's already inside the network. We cannot rely on the perimeter to give us this information. Along with that, we want to align our defenses and our analytics against the MITRE ATT&CK framework. It gives us an objective measure to say how mature we are in each particular analytic, as well as ensure and feel good that we have coverage of all of the particular options for a particular technique out there. So we want to have the hunt team use the MITRE ATT&CK analytics, go look for evidence of that post-exploitation with the assumed compromise mindset. The takeaway here, we need to focus on post-exploitation. It's fairly easy to catch some of the pre-exploitation stuff sometimes, but this is the stuff that's truly dangerous and will really hurt your organization if you don't catch it. So let attack be your guide for the analytics on this. Quantify and track that. Management will love it. Your blue team will love it. It makes everyone feel much better and much more confident in what they're doing. And at least in our case, this led to a whole bunch of interesting revelations and an incredible detection superpower. Thank you.